Hello and welcome to the Blue Shadow Podcast. My name is Joey,
My name is Dan.
and today we are bringing you our post Andor the series Rogue One coverage. So, our goal here today is to start out by talking about our initial feelings on Rogue One, get brief relationship on Andor. We've released, I mean, practically for the last 2 months, we've been doing, maybe even more, we've been doing Andor coverage. So, we have a long documented history of our Andor feelings. And so we'll go through that and then talk about how Andor recontextualized Rogue One, how it made us feel about it. So, Dan, I want to start with you and ask you, what was your relationship with Rogue One when it was released in 2016 and then, over time as you've grown with the movie?
I was a big Rogue One fan. I think a little over the top for you in the beginning. I was a big fan of Rogue One. I saw it in theaters, and then every rewatch I liked it more. And yeah, big fan.
It
I
very
like
much ticks your boxes
like the
outside of Star Wars, I feel like.
enough grittiness in there, but we still get a lot of the Force stuff. We get a lot of
We get
the fun.
a modest amount of the Force stuff.
Probably got one of the coolest, if not coolest, Force scenes we've gotten in Star Wars in that
I
movie.
okay, well we'll get there. We'll get there. For me, I if you've listened to us at all, I am a very big Force Jedi lightsabers, that type of Star Wars. So Rogue One was a little bit of a tough pill to swallow for me when it first came out. Again, saw it in the theaters. I really liked it. I think it's a really good movie, and I'd probably watch it over any other non-Star Wars movie. But it is not my favorite Star Wars movie, just in terms of what it is. I think it's really well done. I think it's really cool. I have some, things that I don't love about it, just personally, but I think it's very well done. And you know, I I wasn't as enthusiastic about it as time went on. I was really excited about it when it first came out, and then as I watched it, here and there, again, I didn't watch it that many times, but it just didn't quite resonate with me as much as some of the other shows, which led me into not being super excited for Andor. I didn't really love the first season the first time I watched it. Dan had me rewatch it, really liked it, didn't love it, and then I loved season two. I thought it was fantastic. So Dan, even though we've done lots of work talking about Andor, want to remind everyone of your Andor feelings.
I was a bigger fan of Andor from the start. As Joey said, it ticks my Star Wars boxes. Season one ticked them, and then season two was arguably some of the strongest Star Wars that's been put out in a long time.
I would even say ever. I don't even think we have
I,
to.
I, I almost said that, but I'm like, is that going to be too much of a stretch? No, I don't think so. That was some of the strongest Star Wars ever, especially for a TV show.
It was really good, and not having any shred of lightsabers. The fact that I agree with that, and it just shows the strength of the show.
And nothing felt forced in that show.
Force.
Where I exactly lack of force, but sometimes I feel like we get in some shows they'll throw in the gratuitous cameo.
Even in Rogue One, there's the 3PO R2, for example. Like it makes sense. They're probably there, but like
That over the top ghost scene. I'm
that
just
is
kidding.
not even it was tasteful and understated.
Um, but no, I thought Andor was very well done, and I think it only made Rogue One that much better.
Yes, and we talked about in our finale Andor series slash season two finale episode about how well they teed up Rogue One. So I was very excited, and very shortly after I finished the series, I think a day or two after, probably a day, I had put on Rogue One and I was ready to go. So I'll just we're not going to go through the whole movie step by step, but I want to ask you, Dan, now, after having watched Andor, how has that changed or has it changed? How's your relationship with Rogue One post Andor?
Well, it was a gut punch the first time I watched it. Just not You're not supposed to feel good leaving that movie, but you do though, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But this time it was like there's somebody took a sledgehammer to my gut.
It, it, yeah, I feel a very
Knowing
similar way
knowing what was coming to the
the
whole
whole
time
time.
just did not make me feel good. But I found myself a lot more involved in it too than I have in past rewatches.
That is where I have found myself, even though like I said, it's not my favorite. I didn't resonate with me as much. I now care deeply about Cassian.
Hmm.
And you could just tell there were a few scenes, very few, where I could be like, they clearly didn't like the background wasn't in their mind that because obviously it's years like 10 years in the future almost.
Hmm.
But I think there are scenes where the little looks he gave and the tone that he takes and the way that he responds to situations, I could think of different scenarios in the show that might be running through his mind,
Yeah.
which is
No.
awesome.
Hmm. It was so good. And there's a lot more things in this rewatch that I haven't picked up on before. Just little things. Like, do you remember Luke's call sign from A New Hope?
Red Five?
Yeah, we saw Red 5 die
Yeah, he died.
in Rogue
Yeah.
One.
That's
Those I never
that's
picked up
old
on that.
hat, Daniel.
Well, forgive me.
That's all right.
No, it's
But
not all
no, it's
right.
cool. It's
You
cool.
no.
Listen, the one day, it was May the 4th last year, Dan and I went to Star Wars trivia with my wife and his girlfriend. And I think Dan looked mortified that I knew very obscure pieces of Star Wars trivia.
They were very obscure. It wasn't it there was some off the wall stuff. But we
We'd known each
digress.
other for a very long time at that point, and
Yeah.
I still surprised him. Anyway, I think for me, it did not change my overall like it didn't bump Rogue One up a movie on my list, if you will, but I I definitely appreciated it a lot more, especially like watching Cassian make those big choices, like not shooting Galen, for example. Like
Hmm.
it's coming after having seen Rogue One. You knew it was coming from the beginning of Andor, but probably thinking of the thing, like thinking about Luthen and the way that he acted, and like I think that all informed that decision.
I mean, especially in the beginning of the movie when the first time we see Cassian, he shoots a rebel in the back.
Hmm. Did you feel that that was like again? Everyone knew that was coming, but do you personally feel that that was at odds with the way that the series ended?
No,
I don't
I think
either,
the
but
series showed that he knows his importance and that I think he realized he's more important to the rebellion than that guy. That's a horrible thing to say, but it goes back to with what Luthen said. It goes back to Cassian's speech to Jin as they're leaving Yavin and pretty much said, like, we all have done bad things. We've done bad things for the rebellion. It's time to make it right.
and that's one of the things that like that particular speech was a moment that hit harder for me this rewatch post Andor, thinking about how Cassian maybe a day or two before
Hmm.
that, before Jin was standing in there and everyone was being rude to her about wanting to, do something.
Yeah.
And I don't think we see Cassian in that big meeting, but it's so unsurprising that even though they were fighting in their scene prior to that, they like he was right there with her ready to go.
Yeah. Cassian was not in that meeting
Okay, so then that makes it even better that he just knows what's happening in there, and he's
because
still
he said, like, as she walked out, like, I knew they weren't going to listen to you.
yeah. So that it's so like again being able to draw back to what was happening there days before it was just I thought it was
Mhm.
such a strength and such a gift for that movie to have that.
And I think, too, it was interesting to see how that dynamics was very much so the same, but it was always the people on the ground who knew what had to be done.
Hmm.
And the people who were further removed from it, like the senators, were the ones who were scared, who were timid. But Admiral Radish, for example, was like, "Yeah, no, we're going. This is
I
what we
like
have to do."
I'm a big Radis fan.
Yeah.
Um, I another thing that I really was fond of was and I don't like the character of Saw Gerrera. That is no secret if you've been listening to us for any length of time. But seeing the Saw thread connect and like, you know, he's going through the different, popping up in the different arcs of Andor and just
Hmm.
seeing all of these stories converge. And to that end, also how season 2 of Andor built Krennic got like 1 degree closer to Cassian throughout that whole season 2 to the point where you get to Krennic shooting Cassian in the shoulder at the end of the movie.
Hmm.
I just thought that was
Flip it.
so like what?
Oh, they shot each other. Yeah.
Well, Cassian shot Krennic, or Krennic shot Cassian while they were in the plan tower
Right.
thing,
Right.
and then Cassian got him right back. Show Cassian, I think, would have shot him in the head though.
I think movie Cassian thought he killed him.
And I recognize it's the same character. There, it is so
Yeah.
insanely consistent. But Cyril style, it would have popped in one ear right out the other in the
Yeah.
show. But that's again just silliness. Um, what else did I want to say?
What did,
Go
while you
ahead.
think of that, what did you think of Krennic, the character of Krennic? You kind of just briefly touched that he got a degree closer to Cassian. Did you have any thoughts that differed about Krennic after watching Andor?
First and foremost, I want to come to the back to come to the Andor stuff in a second, but I did not realize over the years how almost every single one of his lines was memed. Almost every
Yeah.
single one is like a iconic, regularly used Star Wars meme.
Oh
I
yeah.
did not remember that it was like all of them.
Hmm.
It's awesome.
It
But
was.
second, I liked him more because I liked the how what he described, what Ben Mendelsohn had described in interviews as fruity Krennic earlier
Hmm.
on in the season. You get to see him become stressed and like start acting maybe a little bit impulsively, a little bit erratically, uh, choking under the weight of his aspirations, if you will. And I
Yeah.
like that growth and progression.
It was also fun to watch too how he was in the show the biggest fish in the pond in every room he walked in. And then virtually every time we see him in Rogue One, he was there was somebody who was a lot higher than him that he was talking with
And
every time.
the beauty of that is I think this kind of can get us into if you're okay moving on from Krennic.
Yeah.
This gets us onto now like the flow of Star Wars. So we start Andor with these like corporate security cops on this random planet outside of a
Hmm.
brothel. We work our way through Andor to Krennic, who's the biggest fish in that show.
Hmm.
Work our way through Rogue One up to Tarkin and Vader, and then through the original trilogy we get to Palpatine. So it's like it's such a natural flow in that sense, but also in the sense of like if someone wasn't a Star Wars fan and they're a fan of more serious television, I would say show them Andor, show them Rogue One, and then by that point they would probably if they liked it, they would be so invested that it would carry them through the saga.
It's this is going to be a hot take. It would almost be the most natural way to introduce them to Star Wars.
I think depending on the person, I, I think you are correct.
Even if you do Andor season 2 to Rogue One
I see.
to A New Hope.
Again, I don't. My wife, while having seen literally everything else Star Wars, just did not vibe with Andor and hasn't seen anything else. I'm still going to make her watch season one. It's important
Yeah,
for
because
season two.
she
It makes season two hit harder.
it does.
So I still think it's worthwhile. But wow, look at me defending it. What is wrong with me? What happened? Season two was
Nothing.
phenomenal, is what it
They
was
did what they had to do.
to win me over.
Hmm.
I was definitely not on the Andor hype train, but I'm I wouldn't call myself the conductor, but
I mean, you even were talking about how you were glad Saw Gerrera got screen time, which
I think what they did with him was good. That doesn't mean I like him.
I will say I liked him the most in this than any other time we've seen him.
In Rogue One?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's fair.
I thought it was
Yeah.
his least amount of chaotic.
It still is kooky. I knowing now, this is something that I frequently talk about how I listen to Force Center podcast. I They brought up, do you think that he's huffing oxygen or he's huffing, is it rhydonium? When he like, he's like
Yeah.
talking and then he goes, what do you think he's huffing?
I think he's huffing oxygen because when he met his demise on Jeddah, he intentionally pulled the plug.
I think that is the logical answer, but I think it's thoroughly entertaining to think that he's like doing that.
Just huff, just huffing paint.
Just, his sister, as he called it. Um, the K2's death hit so much harder. I already hated it, but it hit
Yeah.
so much harder. And like, there's that moment where and I mean, you watch Rogue One, you can tell Cassian and K2 are friends, but
Hmm.
knowing that they had that about year and that friendship that they clearly built, giving Cassian that extra moment after he realized what was happening, it was just Very, very, very strong.
Hmm.
Um, One thing I will say about the movie is that I found myself, because I care about Cassian so much, anytime someone else was on the screen, I was like, get me back to Cassian. Did you feel
It's
that way?
in the show, in the movie that where he wasn't supposed to be the main person, where it was supposed to be Jin. It finally felt like it was Cassian's show.
Yes.
Where the exact in Andor, it was more of everybody else around Cassian, and Cassian's like the common denominator.
Uh-huh. That's something that if you listen to our Andor coverage, I complained about even in through parts of season two, is that Cassian felt like a side character in his own show. He very much felt main character, like if not main character, split with like even like main. He and Jin were the main characters.
Yeah.
I will. Can I get to some like non-Andor
Yeah.
related stuff about Rogue One, just
Yeah.
as a friendly
Yeah. Yeah.
conversation? I didn't like Jin as much this go around. I don't know why. Maybe it's because she was just at odds with Cassian, and I'm so blindly Team Cassian for some reason now.
I wonder what the reason could be.
Did you find yourself like I still love Chirrut and Baze.
Mhm.
I guess I think now that I have built, you get a lot of Jin's backstory in Rogue One. You get Cassian's backstory in Andor. I guess I just feel like maybe there was one too many or two too many Rogue One crew members that like you couldn't get attached enough to all of them. Do you feel that way, or am I just crazy?
I mean, who are the Rogue One characters are you talking about? We're talking,
So we got Cassian, Jin,
right?
Bodhi, Baze, and Chirrut. The main cast, if you
Yeah,
will.
yeah.
Like I love Baze and Chirrut, absolutely. But would I have been able to form a better bond with the characters overall and spend more time with them if it was just Bodhi, Jin, Cassian, and um or those maybe Chirrut and Baze get smushed into one character or something. I don't know. It's just
I
just a
think
hypothetical.
I think they didn't have as much screen time, but I feel like they had just enough for their character.
Yes, and I
What their
really
character warranted.
prior to Andor, Chirrut was my favorite character in Rogue One.
Hmm.
So that was one thought I had. And the other thing is I love the hallway sequence, but it does feel a little manufactured in the context of the movie, maybe. I don't know.
See, I disagree. I think it makes everything seem more cohesive.
It
Through
does.
through what we've got in the show and in the movie, we finally know the lengths that everybody went to get these plans. It would make sense that Palpatine would send Vader to go do what he had to do to get it.
It's
And then it
true.
also makes sense that he, immediately chased down the Tantive 4.
It does. It does. I guess I don't
It
know.
added to
Maybe
the
I was so used to not seeing the lightsabers that now it's like, whoa, fish out of
well, I think
water.
the point was it was trying to show just how important those plans were.
They are. And again, the scene is awesome. Like don't make me think that I or don't at all
No,
think
no,
that I
no.
don't love it. It is fantastic. I think rivaled maybe by Luke's Mandalorian hallway scene is the best
I
Star
think
Wars hallway scene.
yeah.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. K2's was pretty good too.
Oh man. I think I've about exhausted my thoughts, but there are two other things I want to say about Andor. Do you want to say anything else first?
About Andor Rogue One.
The whole shebang.
Hmm. See, I was really a fan of it, and I love we got to see the tactics a little bit more too.
Hmm.
It
It
was
it felt like we were seeing like the war, like it felt like a war movie ish, and war movie
right,
in Star Wars.
and again, I think my attachment to Krennic grown a little bit more too, and it was just so funny. Where it felt like he was the only sane person in that building,
He really is such a diva though, with the white cape and the yelling. Love him.
always being escorted by the two Death Troopers.
Yes, it's hysterical. Oh man, so
Yeah.
good. For me though, the I was thinking throughout the whole movie, I would find myself thinking about both first Lonnie, who's the reason they even know about these plans in the first place, and then Luthen, who set up all the pieces for this to work.
Hmm.
and then Mothma. I was thinking about all of her journey. It's so enriched the movie, and I think for me, like I think I like the series Andor more than the movie Rogue One, but it
Hmm.
certainly elevates Rogue One. And if Rogue One was your favorite movie and it's at the top of your list, Andor's going to make it even farther up, I feel like.
Oh, yeah. It was the only thing that would have made Rogue One better is if we saw characters that were introduced in Andor.
Which
Can you
is just
imagine Vel being at Yavin 4?
uh
I could see her joining.
it does make you wonder, do you think Cleo would go?
No, I don't think Leia would go. And not because she doesn't want to, but I think she knows she wouldn't be able to offer as much.
It's true, and that
Be-
especially because she was like pretty banged up.
She was pretty banged up and she just doesn't have the experience. We know Jin was a rebel fighter with Saw Gerrera.
Hmm.
It makes sense that she could handle herself with a blaster. Even as K2 said, like, are you do you trust her?
I want to leave us on one other note, but I forgot what it was.
While you
So
think of it, I want to ask you a question
go ahead.
that we haven't talked about this. Speaking of the whole Mothma, her build up,
Okay.
there was a deleted scene that was filmed for Andor season 2 where we meet your boy one more time, Perrin.
I
Oh,
didn't
you
hear
haven't
about
heard about
this.
that?
No.
So they reportedly filmed a scene where I guess before Mothma's speech, she was at home at some point, and I guess Perrin came up to her and pretty much said, like, "Do you think I'm a fool? Like, I know what you've been doing this whole time. The ISB has questioned me countless times, and I've never given you up. You could have trusted me, but you didn't."
That would have been a fantastic scene.
Yeah.
Perrin. He's still
And then
sleazebag, but
he's still a sleazebag. Then it would make that last scene hit even more.
uh-huh. Because he just wants Mothma.
Yep.
He wants more Mothma. I remember how I wanted to end it. I saw
Perfect.
a fun theory. I wish I could remember who to give credit of the Andor spin-off series, the next one. Joke, like again, hypothetically.
Yeah.
The idea was that, Mon Mothma's line in Return of the Jedi, many Bothans died to bring us this information.
Hmm.
The Andor spin-off series would be Clea and Vel working with the Bothans to
Yeah.
find
Ooh.
information about the second Death Star. It's not the plans. I forget what exactly they give them. Whether I think it's where it's going to be or something.
Yeah, I think it was how to get to the Fars move. I think it was that they needed to get to Endor, if I'm
Yeah,
not
it was like
right.
where it is. It was not the plans because I think they went into it without plans.
Yeah. One more thing that I wanted to bring up that you just actually reminded me of, then we can end it.
Okay.
Do you think when Cassian was on Jeddah, he was having Gorman flashbacks?
Yes. Oh yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. And you could tell, like again, I think it might be just Diego Luna being a good actor and playing like being a little shaken by it, but it it just there were so many little things and little choices. I think like when he said Galen would be proud, I think he was thinking about his mom.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
There's so many little things from that show too, from the movie of the scene between Krennic and Tarkin when they're talking about Jeddah, and Tarkin's like, "We need a test," and Krennic says, "I can blow up the planet,"
that's not necessary.
and Tarkin's like, "Calm yourself. We don't need that."
Didn't it remind you though, like you said, of like the Partagaz Krennic relationship? But
Yep.
whoop. Anyway, great show, great movie.
Really increased my love for the U-wing too.
Yeah, Ewing's cool. That might be. I think I said this before, but I think that might be the my favorite of the new like rebel ships introduced into the
Yeah.
newer Star Wars era.
Yeah.
I think so. Other than the Ghost, obviously,
Yes. But
and
I
the
could talk
Razor
about
Crest.
Yeah, I could talk about Rogue One all day though. So
I know you can. So we will end close our post. This I guess this closes our Andor season two, Andor season our Andor series coverage, right?
yes, our coverage of the person casting Andor.
It was an excellent ride. I really enjoyed it. Let us know what you think about it. We'd love to hear from you. How did your Rogue One rewatch go? Because I'm sure you watched it if you're listening to this. We'd love to hear from you. Is there anything we didn't mention that you'd like to see us talk about in the future? Please feel free to let us know. Because while this is ending the Andor era of our coverage, we're not done talking about that. I'm confident. So please let us know that
Yes.
and consider giving us a like, subscription, review, comment on YouTube or the podcast platform of your choice. Consider giving us a follow on Twitter or X at Blue Shadow Pod or on Instagram at Blue Shadow Podcast. And with that, we thank you very much and we will see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you.